While going down the stairs, I lost concentration, slipped, and fell hard down the steps. An unfamiliar, mechanical voice rang in my head. Modified system. The dog's blood linked countless fragments of memories rushing back. I found myself recalling my previous memories. It turns out that the world I'm in is just a romance novel I once read. The male lead abused the female lead both physically and mentally, making me always feel helpless because I couldn't slap the screen at the end. Because of breast cancer, he died prematurely. I became one of the characters in the book, the mother of the tyrannical and abusive president. Since my anger index towards the character was up to standard, the system gave me the right to modify the plot. Just by correcting the 100% dog blood plot of this novel, I can return to my original world. Currently, the plot is progressing to the point where Bok Noyet Kwong returns to the country, telling the male protagonist that the reason she left him that year was because she had an incurable disease. My stupid son immediately believed it, living and dying, wanting to save Bok Noyet Kwong's life, otherwise he would kill all the doctors in the city. I was startled. I couldn't let this stupid boy continue to embarrass me. I opened my eyes and discovered my hand was held tightly by someone. Ko Hoai saw me awake, stopped, and quietly withdrew his hand. "Are you awake? Is there anything uncomfortable?" I looked at the husband in front of me, thinking about the fact that the person who had lived with me for so many years was just a character in a book. I couldn't help but feel extremely difficult to say. I hugged the blanket and lay down. "Ko Hoai, my head is so dizzy. I feel so uncomfortable." Ko Hoai frowned and looked towards the family doctor, the bottle next to it. Dr. Truong was sweating. "Mr. Gu has checked carefully. The lady was only hit. Use blood circulation medicine for a while, and you will be cured immediately." Ko Phuong Nien said, "Where, my old mother is about to die, and she still hasn't come to visit." Ko Hoai looked at me a few times, asked the doctor to check me again, then went out to make a phone call. Dr. Truong held the tools, sweat pouring down. "Madam, where do you still feel uncomfortable?" I laughed. "It's okay. When Ko Phuong Nien comes home, I will be fine." Receiving Ko Hoai's phone call, Ko Phuong Nien quickly went home. Before entering the door, I heard his voice. "Dad, what's so urgent?" "I'm very busy." As soon as he pushed open the door and saw me lying limply on the bed, Ko Phuong Nien was clearly startled. He quickly walked over, no longer absent-mindedly, quickly asked, "Mom, what's wrong?" Ko Phuong Nien looks a lot like me, almost cast from the same mold. Only his eyes are similar to Ko Hoai's, deep and affectionate. At one glance you can immediately see the evil. I was breathing heavily, waving to Ko Phuong Nien to come closer. "Junien, come here with Mom." Ko Phuong Nien quickly came to my bedside. I was as quick as lightning, jumped down from the bed, swung my hand, and gave him a painful slap. The popping sound was so loud it hurt my hand. Ko Hoai was surprised. Ko Phuong Nien was also surprised. Dr. Truong did not raise his head. "Pack up your things and run away." This slap turns off the sinner. Ko Phuong Nien stood in place, looking at me bewildered. Being this old, he's probably never been beaten like that by anyone. He is the only son of the Ko family. Ko Hoai is a gentle person. I have a reluctant gentleness. At most, he only scolded him a few times and never moved a hand. He lived a smooth life. After waking up, I deeply realized that it was my indulgence in Ko Hoai's that had nurtured such a bad karma. With this twisted story, I had to use slaps to wake him up. I changed hands and slapped him again. This slap turns off this cold-blooded and heartless sinner. This slap turns me off. Ko Phuong Nien reacted, took half a step back, avoiding my slap. I couldn't believe it. "Mom, I'm fine. Why do you hit me?" I was mad. Mom asked me, "If you don't worry about work, why run to the hospital?" Ko Phuong Nien was silent for a while, looking sick. "Oh my God, Yin fell sick. You are truly a good man. You and her are not related. What does it have to do with her being sick and needing you to take care of her?" Ko Phuong Nien said, "Mom, don't you know? Previously, Engian went abroad because of her children. I can't help but care about her. Don't come too close to me. I have fear of giants and stupid people. Previously, I was afraid that he would be sad, so I hid the fact that I was sick and broke up with him to go abroad. Now she blatantly returned to look for him and cried and told him that she was sick. Won't you be sad now? Furthermore, what if an incurable disease lasts for so many years and cannot be cured? Not dead yet. Assuming she's really sick, is her illness caused by you? Good or not? What does it have to do with you? Ko Fong Nian, don't forget your identity now. He is already married to Tong Non. He is a man with a family. Hearing the name Tong Non, Ko Fong Nian's voice became angry. Before, if it wasn't for Engian leaving, I wouldn't have been able to marry that woman. Engian has a different meaning for you. She is the first woman I like in my life. Okay, Mr. Chow Thuong. I clapped my hands. I will call Tong Non now because you hate her so much. The two of you should sign a divorce agreement today. Don't spoil someone's youth. Of course he had an affair. He had to leave the house. Seeing that I was actually holding the phone, Ko Fong Nian panicked and refused to let me call. His look of desire and greed made my hand itch. I was about to slap this unfilial child again, but someone grabbed my wrist. I was dissatisfied and glared at Ko Hoi. Ko Hoi, I'm teaching your son. Why do you stop me? Look at what he's like now, how thick-skinned he is. He even dared to declare that if he didn't cure Chu Engian, he would force all the doctors in Haitan to bury her with her. I don't know who learned this shameful lesson from. Ko Fong Nian's eyes unconsciously looked towards Ko Hoi. Ko Hoi looked up at the sky very unnaturally. I pointed at Ko Fong Nian's nose to see how useless his father was. No one can save you today. I really want to die laughing, want to bury it. Right? Today, she will tell you who buries who first. Ko Hoi, let go of my hand. Ko Hoi rubbed my palm, raised his head, and sighed. Aren't you afraid of hurting your hand if you hit it so hard? He took a half step back, holding my hand tightly. Before he could react, Ko Hoi punched Ko Fong Nian straight in the face. Your strength is much greater than mine. Ko Fong Nian staggered and held onto the edge of the table to keep from falling. His face immediately turned red. He held half of his face and said blankly, Dad, Ko Fong Nian has been stubborn for more than 2 years and finally experienced the feeling of being beaten by both men and women. Ko Fong Nian has recovered, physically. Although his eyes were full of anger and dissatisfaction, he no longer opened his mouth to demand that Zhou Yanyan be cured. I was tired of scolding, so I took the glass of water from Ko Hoi's hand to soothe my throat. Today is temporary like that. If I find out you've gone crazy again, she'll beat you again. Okay, it's okay. I'll go back to the hospital first. Ko Fong Nian's eyes widened, not understanding why I called him out of the hospital. After fighting, he even told him to go home, not to tell me to go find Chu Engian, Tong Non. She was in a car accident and is in the hospital room next to Chu Engian. Fong Nian's face turned pale. That's right, the story is so bloody. We also don't know why the terminally ill person is on the same floor as the person in the car accident in the original story. At this time, the late Fong Nian was only devoted to her first love, who had just returned home from the hospital, busy taking care of Chu Engian, ignoring all the missed calls from his wife. At this time, Tong Non accidentally encountered a small accident, hit his head, and called Fong Nian, but was always busy. I had to take a taxi to the hospital to get my wound bandaged. Just cleverly, seeing her husband in front of another woman revealed an unfamiliar gentleness. Tong Non was depressed, but at this moment the doctor announced that she was 2 months pregnant. After that, the story surrounding this pregnancy unfolded again. 600 dioceses about abortion, question about who the father is. Bok Noyet Kwang's illness can only be cured using this baby's umbilical cord blood, and the general manager should stop mistreating her. The lady took the baby and left. Just thinking about it gives me a headache. Ko Fong Nian, the person who caused all this, even screamed in front of me. Had a car accident? No way. That woman wanted to play this game of embezzlement. Mom, don't let her fool you. The corner of my mouth twitched. I raised my hand, and Fong Nian followed a conditioned reflex and backed away to the side. Are you going? Give me 3 seconds. 3, 2. Ko Fong Nian ran away and told the driver to take Ko Fong Nian to Tong Non's hospital room. At this point, I breathed a sigh of relief, hugged my still slightly sore head, and leisurely lay down. Ko Hoi quietly looked at me with a puzzled expression. Avan, how do you know that Tu Non had a car accident? I fell down the stairs and was in a coma for a while, but this coincided with the same time that Fong Nian went crazy at the hospital and Tong Non had a car accident. From Ko Hoi's perspective, I really shouldn't have just woken up knowing these things, but I can't say I read it in a book, so I'll just say roughly. Even if they are husband and wife, they still have their own secrets. As an understanding man, don't ask what shouldn't be asked. Ko Hai smiled and obeyed without asking anymore. Ko Fuang Nian was upset, grabbed her hair, opened her phone, and sure enough, she saw several missed calls from Tong Non. The finger stopped on the callback button, but never pressed it down. The first time he met Tong Non was not good. At that time, he was drugged at the hotel. As a result, Tong Non worked part-time at the hotel and accidentally entered his room by mistake. It happened very suddenly. Someone took a photo of him and Tong Non, intending to sell it for a decent amount of money, but was stopped by Ko Hai. Ko Hai held the photo and asked in a faint voice, "How do you want to handle it?" Ko Fuang Nian has always been afraid of this taciturn father, not to mention this time what happened was his fault first. Therefore, Ko Fuang Nian gritted her teeth and said, "I will marry her to Tong Non. The title of the late wife is much more than that." He couldn't give it. He never felt that Tong Non would be the person he liked. The person he likes is someone like Chu Engian, a flower that is carefully watered in a greenhouse, radiant and beautiful, not someone like Tong Non, who always lowers his eyes, reflecting dark sadness. Just looking at it, I feel unhappy. Even when intimate, he forced her to close her eyes. The more he realized the difference between Tong Non and Zhou Yanyan, the more resentful he became. This is not the marriage he wanted. But he cannot divorce Tong Non. Yes, why can't you divorce Tong Non? Now, the person he loves has also returned to him. The turbulence of the previous incident has gradually passed. As long as he arranges things well for Tong Non, I believe that his parents will not say anything. Divorce with Tong Non, then I? Ko Fuang Nian muttered, but her eyebrows frowned, unhappy. There was a strange, unspeakable feeling of discomfort in my heart. Mr. Gu, are you coming to visit Chu Tu Thursday again? You really care about her. Ko Fuang Nian paused. Or not? Which hospital room is Tong Non in? The nurse was stunned, took out the book and flipped through it. Tong Non is a person who suffered a series of accidents. Today she, Ko Fuang Nian's heart tightened, and she suddenly grabbed the nurse's wrist. How is she? Where is she? Tell me right away. If anything happens to her, I'll make the whole hospital. Before Ko Fuang Nian's cruel words could be uttered, he suddenly remembered his mother's slap. So shut your mouth. In room 302, Ko Fuang Nian walked quickly, finally running straight to Tong Non's hospital room, right next to Chu Engian's room. But today, he only worried about running first and running behind for Chu Engian, completely unaware that his wife, who was a wall away, would have such a serious car accident. Ko Fuang Nian's face turned even whiter. She clenched her fists so tightly that she almost wanted to dig her fingers into her flesh. Late fear came. Ko Fuang Nian kept praying. Tong Non, you must not let anything happen. As long as you are safe, I will definitely treat you well in the future. The hospital room door opened. The dire scene he imagined never happened. Tong Non is sitting upright on the hospital bed. The only wound was a scratch on his forehead. Just as Ko Fuang Nian was reassured, anger flared up in his heart again, because he saw Tong Non smiling brightly at the doctor in front of him. She had never smiled at him like that, even now. His face was smiling so gently just now, but as soon as he saw it, he immediately turned cold again. Ko Fuang Nian laughed coldly. He knew that this doctor was Tong Non's childhood friend. He investigated the relationship between these two people, which was very close. He strode forward, not paying attention to the others present, and pulled Tong Non up from the bed. Tong Non, I underestimated you. Now your acting is getting more and more mature. Even performing in front of my mother. Come back to me quickly and explain clearly to my mother. Being pulled up suddenly, Tong Non cried out in pain. Transcending, stop Ko Fuang Nian's actions. You hurt her. Oh, what does it have to do with you, Dr. Trin? This is a matter between us and my husband. You have crossed the line. Transcending was also angry. If you really consider Non your wife, today she had a car accident. You should be by her side, not with another woman. Hearing that, Tong Non's fingers trembled. No. It's too intimate. Ko Fuang Nian did not pay attention to Tong Non's actions. He already didn't like Transcending, so now he had an excuse to grab the other person's collar tightly. Tong Non is mine. The two of them were as tense as guitar strings, almost fighting, hanging by a thread. The hospital room door was suddenly pushed open again. A luxurious, aristocratic lady, wearing high heels, walked in with a fierce look on her face. In front of everyone, she raised her hand and slapped Ko Fong Nian twice. "You insolent bastard. Mom told you to take care of your wife. Who told you to come here jealous?" Along with this resounding slap, the system's warning sound rang out at the right time, avoiding useless conflicts. The dog's blood level is currently 80%. So lucky, so lucky, so lucky to be on time. I lay in bed, remembering the story in the book. The more I lie down, the more uncomfortable I feel. I remember in the book, after Ko Fong Nian learned that Tong Non was pregnant, she initially planned to be with Tong Non. As a result, because Chu Engian harmed her, Ko Fong Nian thought that the child in Tong Non's womb was not his. But if Chu Engian wants to harm him, he must have an object. I still couldn't remember who the child's father was, until Dr. Truong came back to measure my blood pressure. I stared at his white blouse for a long time. Ko Hoi stood next to him, folded his arms, and said, "Ha ha, Dr. Truong, your clothes are beautiful. Don't look anymore. If you like, I'll send you the Lin route." I suddenly remembered that you were misunderstood as having a shady relationship with Tong Non. Isn't Tong Non Trin Duyan's treating doctor? Trin Duyan was also the first person to know about Tong Non's pregnancy. Because Tong Non hesitated, not knowing whether to keep this child, she asked Trin Duyan to help her hide the pregnancy. I just didn't expect that after everything broke out. This incident also became the reason why Tong Non felt ashamed in her heart. According to the current timeline, late Fong Nian went to the hospital room to find Tong Non. It is possible that the three people will encounter each other. Dr. Truong was horrified to see my blood pressure suddenly increase. I threw off the blanket and stood up, trying again and again to stop me. "Avan, your body is still not feeling well. Where are you going?" I looked heavy and cleared my throat. He kept trying to say he wanted to go with me. I scratched my head. Why is he so unusual today? Normally, you would have returned to the company early. Why are you suddenly so clingy today? After trying for a while, I remembered that there was something else I had to ask you to do. I whispered in his ear. Ko Hui hesitated. "That's not good." "Then I beg you," I said, trying to answer. "Okay. Mom, why did you come here?" Tong Non seemed a bit flustered. She stood up in panic and lowered her eyes, a little scared. Although Tong Non and the late Fong Nian have been married for 3 years, we don't live together. Besides the Tet holidays, we see each other a few times, so she and I are not very close. Because of the car accident, Tong Non's already pale face became even more pitiful. Her mother's family no longer had any relatives, and her husband's family only had a quiet father-in-law, a strong mother-in-law, and an adulterous husband. Thinking like that, Tong Non is truly pitiful. I felt heartbroken and pulled her to sit down. "Tu Non, how is your body? That damn boy doesn't care about you. Isn't Mom still here? Why don't you tell me?" Tong Non pursed her lips. "Mom, I'm okay." Ko Fong Nian, who was next to her, snorted coldly. "Mom, you heard me this time." She deliberately pretended to be pitiful. It was just a small wound and made a fuss. She ran to the hospital. I'm afraid she took this opportunity to see someone. Tong Non didn't say anything, but I was close and saw her shoulders shaking. He reported to Diane, his face showing anger. "Do you know how dangerous this situation is? If No Non was lucky, if the wound was a little off, there would be a risk of being paralyzed for life. Moreover, now she is still trying to control Fong crazy." Holding his chin, his eyes were angry. "If I wasn't here, I would definitely have fought with Trin Diane again. This is between me and her. What does it have to do with you?" Ko Fong Nian screamed. I screamed even louder than him. "Ko Fong Nian, are you crazy? If I wasn't afraid of scaring Tong Non, I would definitely give him a few more. What answer do I still want? Is it true that No Non was seriously injured in the car accident, even lost her life, and you only worried about your ex-lover and neglected her? Only then will you pretend to regret, feel sorry for her, and treat her well." Ko Fong Nian's pupils shrank, his lips trembled slightly. His eyes looked towards Tong Non, with a hint of fear in his eyes. "But she's okay now." I laughed coldly. "It's okay to have something. It's okay to not have something. Old young master, you're really hard to serve. I don't want anything to happen to her. I told you not to say this to me." Ko Fong Nian was silent for a moment, his shoulders drooping. He walked to Tong Non and carefully squatted down in front of her. Tong Non, do you still feel uncomfortable anywhere? Is it just this wound? Have you had a complete examination? What did the doctor say? The system in my head sounded clear. The level of misunderstanding decreased. The dog's blood level is currently 60%. Tong Non paused and gently answered Ko Fuang Nian's question. Trin Dayin looked at this scene, gently closed his eyes, and retreated out the door. Normally, now is the couple's time, so I should know better and leave. But I knew full well what would happen next, so I just gave way. Next to Tong Non, I crossed my legs and sat down on the sofa. Ko Fuang Nian's biggest advantage in appearance is his eyes. He doesn't even need to say much. Just looking at someone like that can give people the illusion that he is deeply in love. After hearing Tong Non's answer, he still didn't feel reassured enough. Tong Non, want to see the inspection report? Tong Non lowered her eyes, clenched her fingers as if she had finally made up her mind. Mother Fuang Nian, I have something to tell you too. Ko Fuang Nian frowned. Is there a problem with the test results? Tong Non shook her head, the corner of her mouth curled up. Actually, I don't want to be transferred to the hospital. Why do you guys force me to transfer to the hospital? Outside the hospital room, suddenly there was a noise, a car mixed with many dissuading voices, among which a clear female voice stood out the most. Do you know what our relationship is with Ko Fuang Nian? Who gave you the courage? That is Chu Engian's voice. Crazy Ko Fuang suddenly stood up, intending to go out. Tong Non grabbed his hand, holding it tightly, her eyes earnestly. Fuang Nian, what you want to say is very important. I put my chin on my chin and waited with Tong Non for Ko Fuang Nian's answer, but saw Ko Fuang Nian withdraw Tong Non's hand. In a moment, Tong Non, I will come back to find you in a moment. I crossed my arms and stood up. Ko Fuang looked at me cautiously, covering her face. I spread my hands. If you want to go, go. This time I won't stop you. I hope you won't regret it later. I don't know if Ko Fuang Nian realizes it. This is the last chance that Tong Non can give him. Unfortunately, he missed his only chance. I just tightened the divorce petition that had just been returned in my hand. But beside Fuang Nian, I coldly laughed a few times. This bastard really wants and doesn't want to chase another woman abroad. The divorce papers that Tong Non sent out were all torn up and sent back. Tong Non, I tell you, divorce is impossible. Can you stop being so childish? No matter how many times I've told you, the research side is indispensable for me. Do you have to use this trick to force me to return home? I tell you, doing that will only make me hate you more and more. I watched Tong Non tighten her grip on the phone, her face becoming paler and paler. Signaled her to give me the phone, late Fuang Nian. Try going crazy one more time. Ko Fuang was silent. Can you persevere for a lifetime? My mother just signed up for a boxing class. Her hands are itchy. She's waiting for him to come home so she can try them out. The phone rang to a busy guy. Fuang Nian hung up. I cracked my knuckles. No, don't worry about Fuang Nian's affairs. As long as you want a divorce, I have thousands of ways to stop her from having anything to do with you, Mom. But Fuang Nian is my mother's son. Why did my mother curl her lips and rub her head? Few elders treated her so intimately. She opened her eyes wide and looked at me like a surprised little squirrel. No, have you forgotten? You are also my daughter now. Oh, that's right, after the divorce, not anymore. But it's okay, you can still be my adopted daughter. Ha. Tong Non's eyes sparkled. She nodded vigorously at me. In the end, Tong Non still chose to keep the baby. Faced with this result, I am not too surprised. I respect every decision she makes. She bought a new house in the city center, in her name, so she can rest assured that she can take care of her pregnancy. I keep trying to understand why I have to do this. I lay on the bed, turned my back to him, and yawned. Do you have an opinion? Trying to shake my head. If you're happy, that's fine, but... Avan. He still wanted to say something else. I waved my hand and was no longer in the mood to listen. No matter how hard it was, my father, Fuang Nian, bought a plane ticket to return home tomorrow. Now Tong Non's belly is also clearly visible. I still have to go to the airport early in the morning to catch that disobedient guy to prevent him from doing anything further. Try your best. Keep your mouth shut. He's usually a quiet person, and I don't know why he's been talking a lot more lately. Having said so much, he lay down behind me, a bit confused. Avan, it seems like it's been a while since you kissed me. I slowly closed my eyes, not sleeping, but I heard the words I kept saying and still didn't move. That's it. trying to say it all the time. Good night, Avan. When going to bed, we must wish each other good night, and when we wake up, we must kiss each other good morning. This is the rule that I forced my wife to set when we first got married, because I knew she didn't like me, so I always thought of ways to turn love into a practical habit, day after day. Even if you don't love me at first, you can still love me a little more. I buried myself in the blanket, half asleep, half awake, thinking about many things. There is both the entanglement between Phuong Nien and Tong Non in the original work, and there is also the story of my past and my nostalgia. The story of me and Ko Hui has similarities with the story of Tong Non and the late Phuong Nien. Always try to have your own bright moonlight. Compared to me, he likes my sister more. Unfortunately, the night before the wedding, my sister ran away with a wandering artist. Taking a step back, he chose me, but I honestly liked him since I was little. At first, he was very cold towards me and often did not come home. He wasn't by my side when I gave birth, but I endured it all. I suppressed my arrogant personality and became gentle and gentle. I told my sister to see if doing so would make her like me a little more. After that, after trying his best to gradually treat me better and better, he began to notice me and care about me. But I don't know if this feeling of his is ultimately due to habit or love, but I am satisfied. It's okay if you don't love me, at least you couldn't leave me. Even in the moment before I remembered the story in the original TC, I still thought the same, so I tried very hard to change the trajectory that the principal had for Song Non. Maybe I also want to pull myself a hand. You were blinded by love and locked in prison many years ago. I almost didn't sleep all night, but when I finally fell asleep for a while, I was woken up by the system's shrill reminder sound. Detect that the blood level of the plot has increased sharply, requiring the host to quickly reduce the blood level. I pushed her hand away. Who are you? Housekeeper? Why do you let outsiders in here? Get kicked out. Chu Yin was slightly confused, took off his glasses, and continued to explain. Your uncle is a researcher. She tucked her hair behind her ear, looking shy. Later Nian will officially introduce you to everyone. I really laughed. This person is also crazy. As soon as she heard the news of Phuong Nian's divorce, she didn't bother pretending to be sick anymore and appeared directly as the female owner. You still dare to scream in front of me. Okay, I'll slap Ko Phuong Nian later to make her angry. Do you want to go to Ko's house? Wait until I die and then tell me. Trung paused. Your uncle and Nian truly love each other. 30 million. Her eyes were a bit moved. She was silent for a moment and then continued speaking. Uncle, my love for Nian is not something that can be measured or measured by money. Even if you gave me 30 million, I still wouldn't leave him. You think it's good, don't you? I said, I told you to give me 30 million. I will let Phuong Nian and you establish their own business. Trung Engian could no longer keep the smile on his face. I was too lazy to deal with her, so I called and ordered Phuong Nian to quickly come and handle it. When Trung Engian saw the late Phuong Nian, it was like seeing a savior. Nian, my mother. It seems like there's a bit of a misunderstanding. Please help me quickly. Disturb, give way. These past few days, because of his divorce with Tong Non, he almost lost half of his soul, looking pitiful. But the slap still has to be eaten. Go around Chu Engian and first slap Ko Phuong Nian. Zhou Yinyan looked at this scene in surprise. I patted Ko Phuong Nian's face. Handle it well. If you let her run in front of Chu Non again, you know I will beat you again. I turned around and walked out of the house, with Chu Engian's horrifying screams behind me. Tong just wants to quickly divorce Ko Phuong Nian, even to get rid of him as quickly as possible. She doesn't even need to divide assets. I said, how can that be? After that, while helping her handle the divorce procedure, he also divided most of Ko Phuong Nian's assets to her. Ko Phuong Nian was already in love. Of course he wouldn't refuse. Moreover, he did not dare to refuse. On the contrary, Tong Non did not dare to accept it. Mom, that's not right. Divide it however you want. I don't want to take much from him. I held her hand. This is what he owes me. If you take a little more, I think you should let him beg. Tong Non hesitated a bit. She held my hand tightly. Mom, I know you're good to me, but I don't want to cause you and me to separate because of me. After the divorce, I will leave here. But Ko Phuong Nian is different. The two still have to live together. I don't care. Oh, it's nothing. Now that Ko Phuong Nian has it in her hands. Wasn't it given to her by Ko Hui? Later, My mother will tell Ko Hai to share the inheritance with him. Don't let him stay here as a freeloader. As for Tu Non, if you're sad, don't suppress it. Don't suppress it until you get sick. From the day Tong Non woke up, after the surgery that day, until she learned she had lost her child, until she signed the divorce agreement, she did not shed a single tear. No grief, no depression, just terrifying calm. Tong Non was surprised. Her nose smiled at me. What do you have to be sad about? Mom, like you said before, I'm so young. This emotional episode is just a small detail in my life. Now, thanks to Mom, I have become a little rich lady. Your good days are still behind you. The more calm Tong Non appeared, the more uneasy I became. Tu Non, you don't need to respect me because I'm Ko Fuang Nian's mother. Mom already didn't want this son. If you want to scold me, just scold me. If you want to hit me, I'll help you fight. Tong Non shook his head. He no longer has anything to do with me. I have nothing to blame him. Why not? After being married to him for so many years, does he truly consider me his wife? You stay at home and do so many things for him. Does he say a word of thanks? What's more, he's already married with a child and still doesn't know how to control himself. What's the point of harboring another woman in his heart? He even abandoned his pregnant wife to run abroad. If he really loved Chu Engian so deeply, he should have kept himself pure for her that year. Why would he be entangled with me? It's true that people and horses can't tell the difference. The more I talked, the angrier I became. Most importantly, this emotional episode is initiated by it. On what basis does it treat you? I stopped all cursing. Tong Non's eyes were filled with tears in front of me. At first it was a quiet sob, then it turned into sobbing, making my nose sting as well. She cried and scolded Ko Fuang Nian. What an asshole! I followed her. My identity has escaped the identity of Ko Fuang Nian's mother. Now I am a reader, holding the same anger when reading this novel in the past, along with the female protagonist in the original who suffered a lot and scolded the male protagonist. By the end of scolding, Tong Non was also tired. I took a sip of water to warm my voice and continued scolding. And Ko Fuang Nian's father, I don't want to say either. Tong Non lost her red face. Stop hearing that. Dad, what's wrong with him? I'm really convinced. Is it just me who cooperates to give birth to this child? He also doesn't know how to manage a bit. It's just because of him that the top is broken and the bottom is also broken. You like to play the game of substitute, and young people also follow suit. Tong Non can scold Ko Fuang Nian with me, but when it comes to Ko Hai, she knows how to keep her mouth shut. Years of resentment erupted in an instant. I held Tong Non's hand tightly. Tu Non, I'm waiting for Mom. Mom will also divorce this bastard. Then let's go together and let the other father and son live alone. Tong Non's pupils shook, not knowing what to see. The expression became stiff. Dad, I interrupted her. You don't need to speak for him. Today, this lady is going to divorce him. Tong Non quickly opened her mouth. Her louder voice drowned out my words. Dad, why did you come here? I slowly turned my head, not knowing when Ko Hai was standing behind me. The corner of his mouth turned down slightly, his eyes staring at me unclearly. Why didn't you wait for me? Ko Hai continued to add. I do not agree to divorce. The words were said in the heat of the moment, but coincidentally, Ko Hai overheard them. Married for more than 20 years, both are older, falling into the Cold War for the first time. I fought unilaterally. I was also angry. What's wrong? Did I say anything wrong? Who does he make a cold face towards? Now I no longer need to maintain my gentleness and virtue. If Ko Hai dares to anger me, I will beat him too. The system came up to remind me. Host, has the story's dog blood value been returned? You can go home anytime. I know, mission accomplished, now I can return. But I don't know if it's because I'm afraid to be close to home or not. I haven't called the system yet. In this world, I don't become anyone here, but experience a completely new life. There are also my family and friends here, and there are many things that are difficult for me to cut off. The time I lived here even surpassed the original world. I'm not sure if I want to go back. Because of this, I've had sleepless nights. At this moment, Ko Fuang Nian still had no eyes to see. I was angry, and he added fuel to the fire. Mom, do you know? No, she wants to go abroad. At that time, I was eating breakfast at the rectangular dining table where I used to sit next to Ko Hai. This time, seeing him also at the dining table, I snorted and told the butler to carry my portion to a faraway place. Ko Hai said, What does it have to do with her going abroad to you? Ko Fuang Nian was speechless. For a long time, I lowered my eyes. I don't want her to go. I laughed coldly for a few times. During this time, Ko Fuang Nian was continuously sued. I intentionally told Ko Hoai not to help him this time, and also told Ko Hoai to withdraw his investment in his subsidiary. Looks like Ko Fuang Nian still doesn't have enough of a headache, so she's still grimacing and getting involved with Tong Non. Ko Fuang Nian knew that my current relationship with Tong Non was not bad, so early in the morning she ran to my old house to find me, just wanting to ask if I could help him hold on to her. I was so angry that I burst out laughing. What face do you have left to ask? Do you think I will help you? Mom, I really know my mistake. Chu Engi and Engian's matter has been completely resolved. Mom, help me this time. Ko Fuang Nian choked up. Without Tong Non, I really couldn't live. Ko Hoai was a little reluctant. He seemed like he wanted to say something, but I glanced at him. If you can't live, you'll die? The day you have your funeral, maybe she will come visit you. I'm not happy, so it's hard to talk. Hearing what I said, Ko Fuang Nian opened her eyes slightly. Mom, am I still your son? You are my mother's only child, the only heir of the Ko family. How can you treat me like that? Ko Fuang Nian's mouth opened slightly and quickly glanced at Ko Hoai. Mom, do you have your own child? Ko Hoai also stopped all movements and blinked at me. Taking advantage of Ko Fuang Nian's lack of attention, I slapped him. Get out, you insolent thing. Do you think about your mother like that? Giving birth to you is not as good as giving birth to a piece of char siu meat. Here you are today. We'll give birth to another child with his father right now. Ko Hoai's entire face is stiff. The chopsticks fell to the ground. I was very dissatisfied with his reaction. He didn't agree. Seeing that Ko Hoai wanted to say it again, I raised my hand again. He moved his lips and bowed deeply. Be born as many as you want. I really can't stand it anymore. Ko Hoai lay next to me, kept tossing and turning, making it impossible for me to sleep. I picked up a pillow and threw it at him. If you don't sleep, get out. Ko Hoai took the pillow. Avan, I want to talk to you a little bit about children. I unconsciously thought he wanted to pray for Ko Fuang Nian. This has nothing to say. Men are really easy to empathize with. Don't you know how Ko Fuang Nian treated Tong Non? How dare you let them reunite? Your son's life is his life. Does Tong Non owe the Ko family a debt? I was scolded. Ko Hoai was silent. Isn't Tu Nian the one you said this morning that you still want to ask for another child? That was originally just me talking nonsense. Are you kidding? I'm almost through menopause. What's the point of giving birth? If you really want, we can adopt one. If you don't like Tu Nian, then don't accept this son anymore. Ko Hoai's expression was full of resistance. I said angrily, your tone sounds very disgusted. What's wrong, calling me old and ugly and not wanting to have children with me? I don't mean that, Ko Hoai said. First of all, I have also experienced childbirth, from pregnancy to birth, to postpartum recovery. Each stage is very difficult. Besides, we're not young anymore. As pregnant women get older, the danger is even greater, so this stage is not suitable for us. Ko Hoai talked so much that I fell asleep. I pulled the blanket over my head. Okay. I know you're old and can't give birth anymore. Ko Hoai is 2 years older than me. Although he is over 40, he is still very self-aware, regularly exercises, and is still very well maintained. Can he? I know I just don't want to hear him blabbing anymore. I intentionally said that to block his throat. But after a strange silence, Ko Hoai suddenly stopped refuting me. I poked my head out from under the blanket. Ko Hoai quietly looked at me, not knowing what he was thinking. Time passed, looking at this face that had been with me for more than half my life. Time has favored him, not leaving too many marks on his face, sometimes giving me the illusion that I'm the only one growing old. He raised his hand to stroke my hair. Yes, I really can't give birth anymore. But if you have other wishes, I will repay you double. So, can you not divorce me for this reason? I was stunned. What does it mean to not be able to give birth? Ko Hoai lowered his eyes. I've had a vasectomy, Avan. When I gave birth to Ko Fuang Nian, I had a difficult birth, spent more than 10 hours in the hospital, and life was worse than death. But Ko Hoai, my husband, did not appear once. At that time, he wasn't even in Hai Tan. He was still working outside. At that time, I didn't want to act anymore. I cursed all the vulgar words, but most of all I cried and screamed. I hate you, Ko Hoai. You're so hateful. If I ever like you again, I will no longer be named Fuang. But when I woke up, I saw Ko Hoi sleeping next to my hospital bed. Dark eye circles, frowning, holding my hand tightly. Seeing Ko Hoi clumsily carry Ko Fuang Nian, a confused expression appeared on his face, completely unsuitable for him. Seeing that the elevator was being repaired, Ko Hoi carefully carried me down the 13 flights of stairs to the hospital, sweating and bored, without saying a word. I love him in a vile way. At that time, he couldn't go back. It was really a dead end. And then he encountered a snowfall that was hard to see in 100 years. Planes stopped flying, high-speed trains stopped operating, and many highways were blocked. According to Ko Hoi, at that time he took a bus, a truck, and even took a cart to smoothly return to Haitan. But when he returned, I had already given birth. I was stunned. I had never heard Ko Hoi talk about this. Because the city he went to for work was the city my sister settled in after getting married. I always assumed that he didn't come home that day because he didn't want to come home. It's also your fault. It's not good. I blamed him. At that time, I clearly reminded him that I was about to give birth. If he hadn't gone on a business trip, this wouldn't have happened. At that time, Ko Hoi almost died. Ko Hoi pursed his lips. I know. So, he vowed not to let that happen again. Giving birth is too dangerous for you. I don't want you to go through such risks again. This world seems to operate according to a certain rule, like Tong known in the original work. Faking her death to escape once, Ko Fuang Nian thought he had completely lost her. Only then did he learn to love her. Ko Hoi is probably the same. He also felt like he was about to lose me, so maybe from that day on, he started to love me. I smirked, not feeling happy at this realization, but also somewhat relieved beyond words. Fuang Van, can we not divorce? I turned away, didn't say yes, didn't say no, just check my mood. I'm not sure. Therefore, Ko Hoi argued all night, causing great trouble. Tomorrow I must tell the housekeeper to clean up the living room, so he can go sleep there. Divorce? I'm not getting divorced. Now this identity is very suitable. Ko Hoi must listen to me. Ko Fuang Nian must also listen to me. After getting divorced, how can I still torture the two of them? What they owe me, I haven't yet properly calculated with them. I smiled sinisterly. That's right. It is impossible to divorce him, so that he benefits. I will continue to torment him like this until he dies. Host, did you really decide not to come back? It's only temporary. I corrected my words. Didn't you say that if I wanted, I could call you at any time? Initially, the system did not agree. It said it had work in other worlds and couldn't stay here forever. I ignore it. It naturally chose me and threw me into this world and appeared after so many years, leaving me in a mess. Now the story is very different from the original. Tong Non went abroad to pursue her dream. Ko Fuang Nian went from being a domineering CEO to being a murderer. Chu Engian also went to prison and could no longer wait for me. Oh, so it's okay for the story to continue to be bloody. No matter how much I hate it, Ko Fuang Nian is the child I gave birth to when I was 10 months pregnant. I saw clearly its wolf-like heart, still not dead, still secretly preparing to go abroad to find Tong Non. If I really leave like that, there is no longer anyone to bind it. The story has just been revised. Perhaps there will be some changes. The system was speechless and could only agree to give me a permission. When I want to leave, can contact it. As for Ko Hoi, the best way I can think of is to tell him clearly. I told him I was not from this world, and I could leave at any time. The system also broke the rules and appeared to testify for me. Therefore, Ko Hoi fell into a feeling of extreme insecurity. I thought, now he's most afraid of losing me. If I return to the old world, although I can give him a heavy blow, this is like a psychological victory. Besides, no matter how much he suffered, I couldn't see it. Instead, let me become uncontrollable. He doesn't know when I will leave. He can only be trapped in his emotions forever. He can lose me at any time. Seeing Ko Hoi always watching me with attentive eyes as if afraid I would lose track of her in the blink of an eye, I didn't show any emotions, but inside I was really happy. Because Tong Non invited me to go abroad to attend her graduation ceremony. Ko Hoi and Ko Fuang Nian followed me like a shadow all day. One person asked, "Can't go?" Another asked, "Can I take my child with me?" I said, "No way." Ko Hoi asked again, "So when will you return this time?" Ko Fuang Nian also asked, "Tong Non's mother, is she still home?" "I don't know when. The roles have changed." Tong known, and I were also so earnest and miserable, asking the other person when would he come back? Can you please not go? I smiled lightly, using similar words to answer. Don't keep following me like that, okay? You guys doing that just makes me hate you even more.